Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I was actually paying attention when we started, and I have a voice talking to me in the corner. We'll discuss that in a second. Joined this evening by Matt Morton from SkyRocket, Dr. Andrew Tridgell, and we have our New Zealand-based Swan botherer, and then Loretta. Loretta was there, but she's gone. Gone to get more wine, and Louis. So where should we start? We shall start with this very talking thing here. And this very talking thing here is I've got the Southern Hemisphere exclusive reverse box of the SkyViper. This is an amazing thing. It's well, I mean, it looks just like all those other sort of drones of this size that you see around and about, but the special magic secret sauce is it's got a GPS and it's running full Ardupilot on it, which is amazing. And the little thing I found out, and that's what's shouting here, I found out that if I just connect Q ground control, just put it on and put the Wi-Fi on, magically it works. And all good technology must seem like magic, and this does to me. I know it should work, I know it's supposed to work, I know all these things, but it just worked. I connected to the Wi-Fi and boom, I did nothing. So what that means, I think, Tridge, is that I should be able to, if it's not windy tomorrow, plan waypoint missions on this and be A for away.
Yes, it's got all the features of normal Ardupilot. So you can definitely do waypoints and you know, use all the different ground stations and things. You know, the target market is for a simpler copter. So most users of this this vehicle are just going to use it as, you know, as a basic video platform, and it's great at that. But the fact that it's got all of the features of Ardupilot underneath is really exciting. So we're really looking forward to it as being something that the Ardupilot community can pick up on and use as like a development platform.
Well, yeah, and I must admit, immediately, it's what sprang to my mind is as a school's platform. I could take this into school, 2 or 3 of them, have some waypoint missions and things like that, and job would be a good one. And the price is pretty. It's going to sound like a flipping sales thing, isn't it? What is amazing? What is amazing is that it's yeah. But wait, there's more.
With the affiliate link, come on, affiliate link time. Hurry up.
Affiliate link. You can make a whole video about that. It's $150, and it really is full Ardupilot in there with quite a nice. What impressed me on the box in reverse here is it says words like U-blocks, and it says words like towel glass for the antenna, and then some Ardupilot thing at the bottom. Not sure if that impresses me or not. but towel glass for the antenna and U-blocks for the GPS. This isn't because let's face it, this is going to be copied mercilessly, isn't it, and quickly. But they're not going to use such expensive components.
Yeah, maybe it won't work as well. Yeah, because a lot of effort went into getting the GPS decent, because it's a GPS drone, and you know, we have to have, you know, the GPS working well. So a lot of effort went into that, and I have no idea whether it's going to be copied or not, but you know, I hope people have a lot of fun with it.
And
I think they will.
And a few of the things that drone implements are also going to migrate to regular Ardupilot. I don't know if Tridge wants to speak about the new compass that is being developing, but it's a great opportunity for Ardupilot too.
Yeah, thanks, Louis. So it's the thing that's a little bit unusual is for this one, apart from the fact that it's, you know, really inexpensive, is that the users that we're aiming for are not users who are used to flying Ardupilot. And there's this funny thing with drones where if you pay thousands of dollars for a drone, then you don't really mind spending 10, 15 minutes getting it set up, calibrated, etc. But if you pay $150 for a drone, then you're much less tolerant of having to spend time getting it all set up. So we've put a lot of effort into sort of getting it factory calibrated, which is pretty unusual for a drone in this price point, that it actually comes pre-calibrated out of the factory. And So we had to do a whole lot of new calibration code to make it possible to calibrate it really quickly and very, very easily. So we can actually do a decent calibration. We've got this one button calibration, which does, with a single button, does the accelerometers and the compass, and actually per motor calibration. So it learns the magnetic influence of each motor on the magnetometer individually. And it does automatic, we call opportunistic calibration of the barometer. Basically, the temperature effect on the barometer is automatically learned, because that's, you know, per sensor. It varies between individual sensors. And so it also does now, as of the latest release, which came out yesterday, in-flight learning of the compass offsets. So that means you can actually do like a factory reset, wipe the calibration, and to lose the factory calibration. And the only calibration you absolutely have to do is the level. You basically place it level on the ground and press a button, and it learns level. Everything else it can learn in flight. So you can just take off and fly it, and within a few seconds it will learn the compass calibration. Because this is, as Louis mentioned, this has been a problem within the Ardupilot community. Compass calibration has been a pain for users, and this little copter really gave us motivation to make that a lot easier. So there's a bunch of other little things we've needed to change to make it easy for first-time users. So Ardupilot normally has a whole bunch of extra arming checks, and you have to have, you know, a separate button for interlock and this sort of thing. So we've now got extra options to make it just easier to fly. So the arming and takeoff, you just raise the throttle. You don't need to go through an arming step to fly it. The binding of the receiver to the transmitter, so it's got its own little transmitter. That's the little transmitter that comes with it. And the transmitter firmware is all open source as well. So we're releasing that. It's a Cypress chipset with, we actually use some of the Paparazzi code. Paparazzi's really great project, does some really nifty things. One of the things they've done is a Cypress chipset driver. So we used that and incorporated that to build a new transmitter firmware. So that one has auto bind, much like you'll see this, some of the new Spectrum gear comes with auto bind. Basically, if the transmitter and the receiver are close enough together, and we've set it up so they have to be really quite close together in order to auto bind, then it'll bind and allow you to fly straight away. All these little bits and pieces just to make the out-of-the-box experience really easy. And because it's no good having a sophisticated drone if the target market finds it too complex to use. So there's a whole bunch of code that is pending to go into Ardupilot Master that implements these sort of ease of use features.
So that auto binding next to each other, you just turn the RF power right down. So that's like so it has to be
it does. Yeah, so auto bind, this is something, in case people don't like the idea of auto bind, it's configurable. There's as is usual with Ardupilot, hundreds and hundreds of parameters. I think there's 840 odd parameters on this vehicle total. Most of them are ones that people will never touch. And so the way the auto bind works is it's a DSM2 compatible protocol. Inherited from the Paparazzi Superbit project. And basically what it does is the transmitter sends bind packets. If it hasn't talked to a drone at all, if it hasn't been in contact with a drone, then it sends periodic bind packets out. And the receiver, if it hasn't managed to talk to the drone that it's bound, as a transmitter it's bound to, then it listens out for those bind packets on a particular channel. And if it sees a bind packet, then it checks the signal strength of that bind packet, and it will only accept high strength bind packets. And that's basically gauged to the distance. So it'll bind at a distance of about 1 meter or so. But once the transmitter or receiver has talked to its partner at all, then it won't bind again. So it's not going to suddenly bind mid-flight, to somebody else flying another SkyViper next to you. But it just makes it easy. So if you replace your transmitter, you don't need to go through a binding step. You just place it near, and it works. There's lots of little bits like that just to make it as easy as we could, because you know, ease of use is absolutely critical in this price bracket.
And the chuck launch, that's what I want to try tomorrow.
Oh yeah, that's great fun. Yeah, so one of the fun things about having this thing is, I'm amazed at how robust it is. So crash it into trees, into bushes, whatever, it just, you know, you pick up and go again. Whereas most, it's partly because it's so light. It's like 135 grams, I think, something like that with with battery. So it's very, very light. I think with the bumpers on, it's about 140. 145 grams. So very, very light copter, which means it has, you know, less mass. So when it hits something or hits the ground, it doesn't do itself as much damage. And so it's great for trying out, you know, things that you wouldn't normally dare to try. And so, you know, throw mode is one of them. We've had throw mode in copter for quite a while in Ardupilot. And so throw mode's a lot of fun, where, you know, you put it into throw mode, arm it, and just throw it in the air. And it uses the IMU to basically determine when it's reached the top of its trajectory. And when it's reached the top of that trajectory, it fires up the motors and stabilizes itself. And then you can make it either continue with a mission to then fly a mission, or you can make it come back and land, or you can make it just stay there with parameters. So, we have throw mode is supported. We added a different user interface for this drone than what you normally have. You can use it. You can in fact bind a DSM2 compatible transmitter to it if you want to, and use it with a traditional, you know, transmitter if you've got one. But if you don't, the transmitter that comes with it, it's not based on switches, it's based on buttons. And it's amazing how much of a difference that makes to the user interface, because all of Ardupilot, its flight modes and its channel 7 switches, all of its configuration were all based on switches. And the difference between a switch and a button is a switch stays in the position when you put it there, whereas a button is you know, it's only there for, you know, a few tens of milliseconds while the person goes click. So we built in a different user interface based around buttons. And the base buttons are the obvious ones you see on the front. So you see these two little buttons on the front here.
I'm looking now, yeah.
You can actually do combinations of buttons. There's two buttons at the back here. One of them is marked as video at the back, and there's one for photo at the back here. But I set it up. When you bring up the web interface, you'll see that there is the default. If you look at the parameters, you'll see there's this actions page where you can set up actions on buttons. And you can set up to 7 different flight modes available, basically with combinations of buttons. So you can make, you know, this button do one flight mode, that button do a different flight mode, that one and that one other flight modes, then combination, hold that one down and press this one, and that's another. So hold that one down and press this one, that's another flight mode, that one down and press this one, that's another flight mode. So that's all documented. So that means for the sort of, you know, people who really want to get the most out of this, you can go and stick drift mode on this combination of button, and throw launch on that combination of button, and acro mode on another combination. So out of the box, it's just got this one mode button, right? Which is, you know, you go between GPS mode, which is, you know, Ardupilot's loiter mode, and indoor mode, which is Ardupilot's alt hold mode, right? But if you want to go to town and use all the other flight modes that Ardupilot has, you go to that actions page, and there's a little drop-down menu next to each button combination. You say what flight modes you want. So you can stick throw mode on there, or you can stick acro or drift or whatever you like. And that actually means that even though it's sort of this push button interface, you've actually got more flight modes you can do on the buttons than you can with a standard Ardupilot setup with a 6-position switch. It gives you an awful lot of flexibility.
It's basically a remote done for the thumb typing generation.
Yeah, that's right. So great.
Exactly. It's straight away. It's like I'm not included in this. It's just already beyond. But my 13-year-old son will love it. One thing I did, I am gonna share this. I like very much is that it's flashing. This is flashing and telling me I haven't got a GPS lock. Sat indoors here for me.
That's right.
Just jolly obvious,
yeah,
isn't it, really? That is just a flipping obvious thing to do, and so that's a good idea. I like that a lot. like that.
And what it'll do, that light, if it gets GPS lock, but it's not yet good enough GPS lock, then it'll flash at a different rate, and it'll have basically the duty cycle of the LED goes up. So you'll see it's on and then mostly on and then off a little bit, right? And that's to show you that almost there in GPS lock, right? Now, one of the tricks with the GPS is at this price point, you've got to try and keep the cost down as much as possible. So the GPS doesn't have a battery, right? And without a battery, it doesn't have the ephemeris and the almanac, etc., saved up, right? Yeah. So if you connect with the web interface, then it will automatically download into the copter all of the assistance, what's called the MGA, right? Multi-GNSS assistance data from u-blocks. So that will be downloaded. If you use the app that is designed to go with this drone, then it will also download that assistance data, and it'll give you really fast GPS lock, right? Without that, GPS lock can take a long time because basically it's doing a cold start. And you won't be getting that at the moment with QGC. When you fire up QGC, it doesn't know how to upload MGA data, right? Now that's something we should teach QGC how to do. And we should teach Mission Planner how to do it. So we should talk to Don and get him one of these and get him to add the support for the automatic MGA data, and to Mission Planner, and to basically all of the ground stations. MavProxy's already got it because, of course, that's what we use to teach, to implement it initially. Because Peter and I have been working with Peter Barker on this, and he and I are MavProxy developers. But we really should get all the ground stations to support MGA upload. But that will also benefit other Ardupilot-based vehicles, so that MGA, because even if you've got a battery, uploading the MGA data will give you faster and better GPS lock, more quickly. So we hope that'll roll out to be just a standard feature across Ardupilot, to push the MGA data down into the GPS. So there's lots of little bits and pieces like that have been done. It's like a virtual battery. And at the developer level, other little bits, because we're trying to meet a price point, it's got no FRAM, whereas all of the Pixhawk and the Cube and the others have got this FRAM chip for storing all your parameters and your waypoints, etc., right? But that is an incredibly expensive chip, big part of the cost of building a Pixhawk. So we thought, well, we just got to, avoid that because it's too expensive. So instead, we've now got support for storing parameters and waypoints using a log-based structure in Flash. So basically, it uses two of the Flash sectors. So, and those types of little changes is what allowed us to get this whole thing. So if I hold up the flight board, that's that board in the middle there. That's the flight board, right? And that's basically a shrunk Pixhawk. It's absolutely tiny. It's got the same microcontroller. The F427 is on a Pixhawk or a Pixhawk Cube, exactly the same controller, but it's got built into it essentially what are the ESCs. So it's a brushed motor controller. So you'll see the 4 little brushed motor connectors, right? And the 4 little FETs on there. So that means that that little board is, a fully capable flight board with the brushed motor controllers and the full microcontroller, and it's even got the radio. So the radio modem that gives you the RF control is built on that tiny board. And if you compare that, if I grab, there's bound to be one on my desk here somewhere.
It's interesting that you've gone for a relatively full-size GPS antenna there. It looks like, Tridge. You didn't think there was more with that because you've stayed great with the battery, but you've put it back on with that antenna.
Yes, so I've got the GPS in the antenna, and a decent antenna on the GPS really is quite important. And so so SkyRocket worked with Tower Glass to get a decent antenna. So there's the antenna. I've got various debugging things coming out of it here for my Saily, of course. But the other part is this little video board. So that's what does all the video processing, and that's running FreeRTOS, and it's running AP Web. So the little web interface. The other part we wanted to make it really easy for first-time users, because that's our target market. But we also wanted to make it really developer-friendly because, I really care about making a great vehicle for Ardupilot developers. So one of the ways to make it developer-friendly is to make it really easy to upload new firmwares to the vehicle, make it really easy to download logs, make it really easy to see the internal status. And so we came up with this thing, AP Web, which is basically this Ardupilot web interface. And so this little tiny video board running, it's got a 300 megahertz arm on it running FreeRTOS. And that little video board is running AP Web, which is the Ardupilot web interface, which is a very new project. And that's what gives, if you try AP Web, then you'll see that it gives all sorts of sensor output, and it gives you calibration pages and all sorts of stuff. And all the parameters, controlling all the parameters for the flight board and the video board, all via the web interface. But it also gives easy firmware upload. And it also gives you easy log download. And I'm hoping soon we're going to actually make it do log analysis built into the web interface as well, which I think would be really nice. So that you have a one-stop interface that allows you to analyze your logs as well as download them for other tools. And of course the other part you've got to do is make sure that every microcontroller on here, the firmware is updatable, which is a little bit unusual. So there's three firmwares. There's the firmware for Ardupilot, which of course you can upload in the web interface. There's the firmware for the this little video board, right, running FreeRTOS, so you can upload new firmware, but you can also upload new firmware for the transmitter. But given that there's no Wi-Fi and there's no Bluetooth in this, so we implemented a firmware upload across the telemetry, because it's got a telemetry protocol. So it's a DSM2 compatible protocol, but it can also send telemetry down so all the lights do the appropriate thing. And we could squeeze a new firmware in across that telemetry link, so you can actually update your transmitter firmware remotely using that web interface. So you go to the web interface, you say new telemetry firmware and press go, and it'll send it across. Takes about 30 seconds or so, sends it across to the transmitter. Which means as a development platform, you're not stuck with any of the existing firmware. You can actually go in there and hack on it, improve it, and everything is updatable.
What I see on Gary, what I see on this new drone that Tridge has been demonstrating, what the nice things it has is, according to the current regulations that are about to be enforced everywhere in Europe, for instance, with the 250 grams, this can be a game changer for everyone that is being developing for flying platforms, specifically for Ardupilot, because the weighing what it weighs and doing what it does, it's a game changer for the development world, especially in Europe.
Yeah, well, it's all the price points as well. Not only just,
not only the price point, not only the price point,
but that's yeah, it does everything you need to do. This was my previous favorite unmanned aircraft system. Yeah, I love these things because I can fly it from a desk. Yeah. And this will go that way, I'm sure. And what was the weight, Matt? What does it weigh?
Currently it's around 140, maybe a little more with the blade guards on, but yeah, last year we had done a brushless motor model called the Pro, based on Clean Flight and GPS. It was kind of our first attempt into GPS, and Clean Flight wasn't as robust with its GPS code, and we tried very hard to keep that under the 250 gram mark, but that one, through design and iteration, ended up going past that mark. So we actually came in heavier. So this year it was very important for us to make sure that below the 250 mark, and brought GPS performance into where we wanted it to be, and that meant going Ardupilot.
Well, you're starting to ask what I was going to ask you there, is why? Yes, why? But you're no stranger. I've seen Bo's video. You're no stranger to Ardupilot, so it must have been in the back of your mind all the time. Was it a matter of could you shrink down? Was that the sticking point?
Well, yeah, a lot of that was actually being able to bring it down to a desirable footprint. And we also have a little nano drone and a stunt drone and a streaming frame that is all black plastic that still runs CleanFlight. CleanFlight's a great software for, you know, just having a good stable flight. But when you want sophisticated performance on that level, yeah, I've been flying Ardupilotness since, you know, the APM days on my meter wide hex, and I've always been a fan of it. I've always known what it could do, and our CEO Nilo was finally like, yeah, let's find a way to make this happen. And the beauty of being in the position of a mass manufacturer like we are, we can consider components that the industry doesn't normally consider in putting on to a flight board. So the beautiful thing about this was when we got in contact with Tridge and Philip Rouse and the Ardupilot.org team, they all had these ideas on components that they wanted to try out, and they were like, oh, have you seen this? Have you seen that? And the main IMU on this, the beautiful thing about this is gyro, accelerometer, and barometer all in one component. Whereas on the Pixod boards, you've got, you know, the real estate for redundancy. We don't have the real estate for redundancy on this, so, you know, we have to pack as much performance as we can into just one or two little components. And since we're working in a higher number for volume for manufacturing, we're able to consider components that, you know, wouldn't normally be on the radar for developers. And that's been the joy of getting things up and running with Tridge. He's been in my ear pretty much every evening. I have hardware on the first run up of the boards. It was easier for us to build a remote computer box for him to VPN into under my desk. And I would have the hardware hooked up, and he would just be walking around building drivers and setting things up like this. And I would be over here soldering wires up and, you know, doing lead tests and different things like that. And it's, I've gotten quite spoiled to having him in my ear every night for several hours. I don't know what I'm going to do when this is done.
And I'm terrible at soldering, so it's been good since you know, having the boards actually remote in LA, and they're just working on them remotely. I've got a web button for turning the power on and off for the devices that are sitting on Matt's desk, and then I have access to, you know, the JTAG and the USB and all the serial adapters. And so he plugs a, you know, new test device in LA, and then I build the drivers and get it working locally, remotely. And then he flies it over there in LA, and I just watch over video. So yeah, it's been really fun. And the great thing is that I don't need to solder anything, you know?
Yeah, and you're also connected in on Wi-Fi. You actually will, you know, I could go out into the parking lot.
Watch the flights.
And we gave him a big decibel gain antenna, and he could watch us fly outside. Yes.
We had we had Leonard Hall helping with the tuning down from Adelaide. Leonard is, of course, the, you know, our main controller guru who does all the copter controllers in Ardupilot. So when we were doing test flights for tuning, Matt was flying it out in the car park in SkyRocket in LA, and I was watching via video and Wi-Fi, and Leonard was connected looking over my shoulder in a hangout. So he was then watching it as well. So all three of us were basically flying this drone in LA. Getting the tuning right, and it was just a lot of fun.
Well, it opens up all sorts of cans of worms, not cans of worms, but interesting developments for how this sort of thing might be used commercially in the future in a slightly more robust and all-weather version that maybe costs something soar away like $300 instead of $150. Yeah, well, I've said this before on here. I've said this before on here. Grown-ups told me back when I started SUS News there would never be a sub $1,000 GPS drone. Never. It would never happen. $150. $150. You know. Well, so the first GPSs I bought cost $150. Well, about not 130 or something, but you know, getting on for that sort of.
Is that on the market already?
We are ramping up production now. They're coming off the production line, and they should start hitting the shelves in September and October.
Do you have a website that people can look at?
Yes, there's the website is sky-viper.com, and I believe the 2450 GPS. Oh, yeah, it'll be in the link. Yep, down below. Thank you.
Down there, it's already there. And I think again from Bo's video, you certainly are ramping up on the production scale. How many of these do you hope to have out for Christmas time?
Initial production run is going to be about 100,000. And as orders, as we see if orders are, being gobbled up as we hope they are, we will definitely be increasing as demand goes. But the SkyViper line, we've been very fortunate to kind of bring the best bang for the buck to the market. Over the last 2 years, we've been ranked the #1 RC toy, and we'll let the big boys go toe to toe in the 1,000 to 2,000 drone range. But one of the things that we like to prove here is that a quote unquote toy company can come in with a surprising consumer electronic platform that is kind of sneaking in from down below and maybe eating away at some of that ground level there.
Interesting. I've got a list of questions here, Gary. Can I butt in, mate?
Yeah, go on. Go on.
Of course you can.
Go on.
Putting my cynic's hat on, which I've left at the workshop. One thing I noticed, is this related to the other SkyViper products that that have been quite a few of them out there previously, 950 and so forth? Obviously, it looks exactly the same. So you're working with, I don't know, is it the same company that makes those, or are you working with the company that makes those?
Yeah, SkyRocket owns the SkyViper line, and we've been around since, I think this is our 6th year now of new frames on the line. We started with just one frame many, many years ago, and been trying to reiterate each year.
So one of the things, you seem to be going for the sort of bottom end of the what do you call it, recreational drone market. I see this as a fantastic tool for Ardupilot developers, because it's a piece of throwaway kit that if it does fly away, you don't care, it's $150, or if you smack it into a tree, you don't care. And it's very safe, it's very light, so it gets around all the safety implications. On the downside, it's very small, so maintaining line of sight becomes difficult under the regulations. But the thing is that, like, I'm looking at the website and it's pitching it as a camera drone, but I think we all know that with geared brushed motors and a 720p camera, it's got jello to die for. Like, you're not going to be competing with the Phantoms and the Sparks and the Mavics and things. I'm wondering,
correct.
So are you sort of looking at a dual market push, say the consumer market and the Ardupilot developer market, or Ardukopter developer market? Are they sort of treating them as two separate markets, or are you just saying, well, this is a great consumer drone, and if you want to develop, then use it as well, or it's a great developer drone, if you want to use it as a toy, you can use it as a thing? Have you defined the market well enough for what you're selling?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because we have a lot of retail partners, and a lot of times the cutoff for a lot of our retail buyers are, the $99 price point and below, it's considered a toy. Anything above that, it's, kind of considered more consumer electronics. So we have had, from time to time, some of the buyers saying, oh, that's too expensive for a toy, bring it down, or it's too tiny to be taken seriously. For that money, you want to make it bigger and make them feel like they're getting more bang for their buck. But we kind of tried doing that with the Pro last year, and the Pro's performance was not ever really, honestly, to the level that we had initially hoped to achieve for a really good GPS. Clean flight was close, but anybody who's tried to fly GPS with clean flight knows that you're pulling out more hair than you're getting a good response on. So that's why we went to Ardupilot for our Premier line. So with this, we're actually we're making a statement. It's not a toy, but it's 1/10 the price that you would be paying for, a Phantom 4. And yes, you're not going to get the video quality of, a 4K gimbaled system. It is a fixed camera, and you will see jello on the video. But that is, now that we're getting the performance down nicely with this, as we're proving out with this frame. Our next big assault is going to be on really good video imaging from the sky as well.
But Bruce, this, according to the regulations, is going to be a toy. So no regulations apply to toys.
Right.
So that's a good thing.
In the regulation sense, but for our retailers, you know, they have their different categories of items that they're putting on the shelves. So,
So what you're saying
know,
is it's not a toy. Yeah, you're saying it's not a toy, but you can use it as a toy.
Here's the great thing. The base SkyViper customer base wants a really great experience right out of the box, and that's been our big push from this. Is we're taking all of this, you know, really complex software and putting it into a package that you can pretty much take right out of the box, have a fully charged battery, take it outside, clear view to the sky, let the GPS acquire, and boom, you're flying a solid frame.
It's interesting. You've got a lot of competition in this market space. I mean, every Chinese manufacturer and his dog is knocking out these little drones with 720p cameras claiming to be HD, and they've got brush motors, and they look very similar, and their price point is going to be lower. And of course, a lot of people buy on price. How are you going to, I mean, it's all very well saying, oh, we've got better video, we've got better GPS, we've got Ardupilot, Ardupilot, whatever, but to the average consumer in the street, is that going to mean anything?
That's a great question, and we hope the answer is yes. And I think what we're doing is we're coming out of the gate pretty hard and solid with an amazing lineup of talent behind this drone. We've got Andrew helping on the programming side. Philip Ross was the designer of our flight board. Leonard, Peter, Paul, all of the guys from Ardupilotness.org that have helped bring this together. When you fly one of these, I think you're really going to be impressed. We needed fast GPS, you know, lock, because if John Q consumer is sitting there and it's taking 2.5 minutes for his GPS to get a lock, he's not going to be very happy with it. That's why we go with U-blocks. That's why we go with tau glass. We want to make sure that it is actually faster than expected. Yep, and we also inside on his forehead there is just an indicator, basically, you know, kind of pleading for a little bit of patience. This is a sophisticated, you know, piece of equipment that you're going to be working with. It may take a little longer than normal, especially on first boot up to get a lock, but when you do, you're going to be happy with it. I think anybody that flies this and really gets into it and tinkers with it, it's a perfect gateway from bringing an owner from the realm of toy into the realm of, you know, this is what you can do with a really good flight software.
Well,
So
I think
what
this-
age do you think could, what
After you,
age,
Lorette.
what's
Go ahead,
the,
Laura.
what's the minimum age that you think?
This is rated for 14 plus.
I think part of your sell is going to be the story of what it can be used for, and yeah, that I mean, of course, the trouble is you are preaching to the converted, but if you've been around this game for a while and you realize the value of this sort of a little sticker telling, which is going to be reversed, isn't it?
Yes.
If only it was readable. Otherwise, it'd be great. Yeah, it's telling a big red sticker on the box.
What I see is in Europe, with all the 250 grams regulations, and for instance in Portugal, we'll have to have mandatory liability insurance and registration of all drones above 250 grams. This thing has the possibility of selling like hotcakes because it's cheap and does not need the mandatory insurance and does not need to be registered.
But you
We
don't
hope
know that.
everybody shares that.
But you don't know that when you're stood in the line at Toys R Us or whatever that big box store is, and you're the parent, you don't know that. You don't actually give a monkeys about the regulations or this or that or the other.
Oh,
Christmas,
the kids will know, Gary. The kids will know, and you only need one. You only need one to do. No, you only need one kid doing the boomerang throw effect on the drone, and it will explode. I
no,
believe
not-
the troll mode
Doesn't explode.
with a mission, the troll mode with a mission is going to be a perfect sellout for this drone.
But
Has
it's a great
everybody-
follow-on. It's a great follow. Sorry, Matt. It's a great follow-on drone,
Oh,
isn't it?
that's
If you've had your $30 thing and you've got your hang of it, this is a great follow-on system. So it's going to be, how do you tell that story that, okay, so you want to try waypoint flights now, you want to try genuine return to launch and all that sort of thing, and perhaps plan missions and flights around your school or whatever. It follows on, and it's a great education tool. That's how I can see the hard sell being, because when you're at Toys R Us, they are all going to be in a box. This box, that box, that box. It's going to be that's the shiniest or the biggest box.
For instance,
Louis, we're talking with having played this game for a long time.
let me tell you what the Portuguese authorities, the Portuguese FAA, is planning for regulations. Every seller has to mandatory identify the buyer before when selling a drone above 250 grams, and this one won't. So if you have on the shelf a Mavic and one of these that costs 1/4 of a Mavic, or 1/5, 1/7, 1/10 of a Mavic.
And nothing.
Hang on. I've got a dice here somewhere. I have got a dice.
When it costs 1/10 of the Mavic, and on the Mavic you have 4K and all the bells and whistles, but you have to register, give your name, and do an insurance, a civil liability insurance. It kills the Mavic, absolutely. And this one, with all its faults, or not as spec'd out as the Mavic, is going to sell out even more than the Chinese, because then you get the Chinese ones for $20, $40, $50 on Toys R Us, and they don't do 1/10 of what this does. So people will go to the highest spec'd one, and below, and which is still considered by law as a toy.
I think the biggest problem you've got is the previous success, though, because this looks just like every other drone you've had in that line, the 950 or whatever, and it's going to be hard to differentiate it as a fully capable machine. If I'd been involved in the design process, for what it's worth, I would have made it look like a mini Mavic or a mini Phantom 4, so it stands out from all the other little drones with prop guards and skinny little arms on the market. Your box needs to stand out as, this isn't just another toy. This is a capable drone in the same category, but it's capable, and therefore you're only going to pay $50 extra, and you're getting a mini Mavic or a mini Spark or something like that. I think that's because a lot of the Chinese manufacturers are going that way now. There's so many Spark and Mavic knockoffs, but they look so much more professional than the little spindly, the 950 and the one you've got now. I would have thought you've got an investment in molding and all that sort of stuff, but I would have thought to make this really sing, you need to you're creating a new market sector. And to do that, you've got to make something that is distinctive, not only in performance, but in looks and presentation. The difficult task you're going to have, I think, is moving out of your previous marketplace, and you're doing it with a product that looks just like all the other products. So have you thought that through in terms of the marketing? I mean, we've got some really switched on techie guys here, I can see that, but the biggest the deciding factor is your marketing. There was Alex Edit, I don't know if you follow his channel, he put a video up the other day, and he went to China. They make the Splash drone. He went there and he was talking to someone in the drone industry, and they said of every 100 drone companies that start, only 10% are still in business a couple of years later in China, because there is such rampant competition. And you know, my philosophy in marketing is don't compete, create new markets and own them, because then you don't have competition. And what you're doing at the moment is you're in a difficult transition phase from a toy into a useful drone, and I don't see a lot of highly visible differentiating factors in your product or your packaging or your marketing. So how are you going to work around that?
Well, I'm actually grinning ear to ear, because we're already planning for next year, and that is actually what we've had behind closed door meetings and whatnot
you can
for the last couple of weeks now.
You can rotate the camera, Matt. You can rotate the camera. Let it.
I'm actually hiding in somebody else's office right now, because I'm not fancy enough to have a door. So I'm actually using somebody's office that isn't here. But I think you're going to be very pleased with next year's designs. We kind of wanted to go this year with kind of more of the familiar, because we want to still bring along the people, our buyers who have made us #1 for the last 2 years. We worked very hard to kind of identify the SkyViper as both a visual and a performance brand. But now that we're kind of bringing in the new performance, I think the next round of designs are going to be pretty impressive. But no, I totally understand.
Yeah, I think you need some good reviews by recognized reviewers as well. I can't think of anybody, but there must be somebody out there.
I think we can find a list.
Yeah, but all I've seen in New Zealand is old blokes flying in parks. That doesn't look like much to me. Yeah, I'd say to me, it's the education piece. It's what I think is very cool. And if you were to build something around that piece of it, here are schools. You get 5 of these. Here's what you do. It's a robotics thing. It's an advanced robotics thing out of the box.
Actually, this week I'm reaching out to members of the local Los Angeles Unified School District, and I want to set up a meeting with them, because this year one of the other ones that we introduced was our stunt drone. So this year, and this is available on shelves right now, it's the E1700. It's the educational series. So basically we have all of the parts available for the stunt drone, and we've developed a really cool interactive app that tells people each of the components of what they're putting together and walks them through the process step by step of actually assembling and flying a fully workable drone. And that one's rated 12 and higher. So that would be a great STEM or STEAM kit for the middle schools. Whereas I see this as being, the GPS model as being an awesome tool for high school and even early college.
Yeah, it should be hackable.
Yeah, no,
if you make this thing hackable,
it is
following. Yeah. So
it's very hackable.
Get the third-party vendors lined up. I want a brushless one. What do I do? In that respect, looking at the design, obviously some really tight constraints on cost in the design, and I see that all on one board with the ESCs. It'd be great if there was on that board, if you could take the signal out and hook it into a standard ESC, so you could do brushless motors. If there was connection points for standard things. Have you got that sort of technology in there?
Start doing some soldering, Bruce. Start doing
there
some soldering.
Would be some soldering required, but yes, actually, I've actually done that, as well as reverse, taken a Pixhawk down to a Pix Racer board in the past down to drive some brushed motors as well. But it's all about finding where the signal comes to, and I've seen people already asking Philip on some of the Facebook pages. And he's, kind of doing the winky face, and he's just like, be patient. There might be some information out there.
on the live chat, Jean-Jacques was saying, I kind of like that flight controller to put on a DLG or something light, and I must admit I had exactly the same thought on some of my little free flight aircraft. It would be nice just to have that, so it stayed within the circuit rather than disappearing off downwind a little bit. So yeah, fingers crossed. But I guess that'll be a very small market at the end of the day, I suppose. So maybe it's not cost effective for you. Good day, Gene. I think are you with us now? Over, Gene.
I think I'm here. Am I here? Can you hear me?
Yes.
In some ways you are, in other ways not.
Good. Yeah, we totally resemble it.
Yes. We've been talking about this, Gene. I've said it before you came. We were told once, no sub 1,000 GPS autopiloted devices ever. Do you remember that? We were told that, weren't we?
Yes, I remember it quite clearly. And now we're
150 of your Earth dollars, full pixel GPS, and all the other, camera, the whole shooting match. Quite extraordinary.
They said it would never be done.
Never, it's not possible. It's impossible. You can't do it. Can't be done. Look, as good as this chat is about this Viper here, and we've nearly done a whole hour on it. It's outrageous.
Sorry.
No, it's great. Perhaps we'll come back to it in a minute. But I just wanted to see if I could elicit some responses from people.
But Gary, this is a game changer, in my opinion, this drone, because it brings pro-level capabilities to a level of weight and price that has never been seen.
Well, yeah, and I think once you've got 100,000 of them out in the wild and you've got 100,000 users using them, then we'll know the next set of issues and problems and stuff that'll iterate into the next sub 200 gram thing that'll be really very cool.
That will create a problem for Ardupilot forum and support then, but we are already upgrading the forums.
Isn't the code by DJI? No, anyway, no, send them off to them.
No, those guys have other problems.
They do, which leads us very nicely into, well done. Well
Excellent segue.
Very good, very good. So should manufacturers, Tridge, it's great that you're here, and it's great that Matt's here, should manufacturers be able to brick their products once they're out in the wild? Or should they recall their products? Which should it be, brick or recall? And of course, we're talking about the Spark. I'll throw that open. Anyone got any thoughts on that?
Hey, Gary, if Ford, Honda, Toyota, and all big manufacturers recall cars, why can't a drone manufacturer recall a drone?
Good point, Louis.
So what's the point? It's a consumer product, and I don't see it's dangerous. It flies. It can fall on top of people. So why not recall it? And if it is not serviced, then stop it. I know it's not pleasant to hear this, but it's a reality.
But do Ford and the car manufacturers brick their cars if you don't take them in for a mandatory recall? If there's an airbag problem, they don't stop on the side of the road and you can't start until you get into the garage and get the airbag fixed, do they?
Yeah, but
no, they don't.
Well, there's a little bit of a difference in the way cars are recalled, because if you'll recall, there was at one car manufacturer, I forget who it was, and I'm not going to mention them because I'm not sure, but they had a problem with a stuck accelerator. And in California, there was that horrific, the police officer with his family that got in the car and they were on their cell phone talking as this car accelerated up to, over 100 miles an hour, and it crashed, and it was horrific, and it killed them, and it was a terrible lawsuit against this manufacturer, so they instituted the recall. Now, the recall, and Loretta will probably be able to correct me on this since she's legal beagle, is that they can institute the recall, and if you don't do it, then you're liable. If you've been properly notified and they've given all due effort at fixing the problem, and you do something silly and goes out there and hurts someone, then it's a shared responsibility. Is that not correct, Loretta?
Yeah, I mean, it would depend state by state, but I really, it's not an area that I've looked into. I don't know that a recall on its own alleviates a manufacturer from responsibility, but I don't know for a fact. I do think it's an interesting question. Once you control software, whether or not you have a duty to brick it, which actually makes it not workable, or a recall. I personally am not in favor of doing that for a lot of reasons. One of them is my concern with changes in software to fix one problem, potentially causing other problems.
Happens all the time.
I know, and it's a real problem. So I never update my software.
Well, yeah, and again, back when I was flying those big Super Bats, we were using the Piccolo, okay, and it was the same thing was happening with it, and we got to Rev J in the software, and it worked for us. And then we were told after that, stop, don't upgrade anything else. And it went to K, L, M, and so on and so forth. But since we had a Rev that worked, we stuck with it, and it worked for us for 3.5 years, and we didn't have any issues.
Yeah, but the thing is, those DJI drones, they phone home, so the manufacturer has the possibility of acting on the drone itself. Cars usually, except for the Tesla that is always telling jokes to Mr. Musk, drones do phone home, and at least DJI drones phone home. And that's the issue. If the manufacturer has the possibility of manipulating the drone, he should also be responsible for updating and enforcing new regulations or whatever it is.
Well, I think shout out to Tridge there. How you doing, Tridge? You know, you'd probably be one that would probably.
Hi, Gene.
Yeah, if you could have a phone home function in that code, would you use it? I mean, would you think it would be something that as a developer you'd use?
So for the particular drone, you know, working on at the moment, the SkyViper, phone home is a little complicated by the target market, including children. And there's regulations regarding privacy and actually sending data. We can't, for example, send logs back to, you know, the mothership back to the back to SkyRocket, because that would potentially be in violation of privacy with minors. And so we haven't actually, although users can download their own logs, and if they chose to upload those logs to a forum or something, we could do that, but we don't do it automatically. And so at the moment, the setup is that users have to choose themselves to upgrade the firmware. It'll show them, you know, what firmware is available, but they've got to choose to upgrade it. It may be that as the app develops, it starts, you know, automatically updating firmware, or there is the possibility that we could make the app running on your phone, you know, refuse to fly unless you update the firmware. That's perfectly possible. That's not really up to me to decide. That's more be decided by others in SkyRocket. But you know, that's technically possible. But of course, as you know, as Gary showed right at the start of the call, you can instead connect QGC, which won't have such a check, or Mission Planner or something else. So the openness of the vehicle means that it's never going to be, you know, an absolute requirement to change firmware or to, you know, behave you know, in such a controlled fashion as what you're talking about. I personally would prefer it didn't. I personally like to choose when to upgrade firmware. I personally, for my own drones, prefer to be able to know, you know, build my own firmware, load it, etc. But perhaps I'm unusual that way. So I would hope that this sort of automatic forcing of a particular firmware doesn't become standard in the industry. But you know, that's I don't know. It's a different target market that's being done with the DJI ones than what we're doing with the SkyViper.
Yeah, and let's remember it's a safety issue that they're talking about. And
Yeah.
Loretta, hit the nail on the head. Really, is that we don't know that it's not then going to run onto another safety issue.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, has it been revealed or advertised as a safety of flight issue? Because when I read it, it was not clear to me that this was a safety of flight. I mean, there were words that indicated things having to do with flight, but it never said that this is what was causing flyaways or loss of control. So
it's I believe it's power related, and it was in one of the press releases. It's to fix some power issue. Quite how firmware issue, I stand to be corrected, a firmware issue could create a power issue, I don't know, but that apparently is what it is. And in just in the live comments, R1 Jewel Ritual there says, Andrew, you're a hero, and he wants to be you, or she. He or she wishes to be you. Just thought I'd fill you in on those details. Yeah, no, it's very interesting. It's cool that they can do it in safety cases. Also makes me think of the world of aviation, where if there was a big problem with a mark of aeroplane, there would be a notice from your aviation authority, and it would be them that told you to hey, stop doing this, that, or the other, or stop flying that. And perhaps they're the more appropriate people in a safety case. But you know, maybe I'm taking that too far. Again, time is going on. There's the hour going by. Did anyone see?
Real quick,
Go on.
I just wanted to pop in on it. Remember Samsung? I thought a great example was how, honestly, at the end of everything with the Note 7, I loved how Samsung handled that. And they did put, you know, a will not be able to use after this point update out there. But what I loved about how they handled everything was they released the full report and findings as to here's what the problem was, here's what we learned, here's what we think everybody can learn from this as well. And I thought that was done very well with how they handled it. It wasn't just a, you know, lockdown update or not, and then they kept quiet about it. They embraced it, and they released all of the information that they learned from what the issues were out to the communities. I thought that was very well done on their part.
I suppose moving forward, as the drone industry grows and moves in different ways, newer manufacturers will take that on board as they grow their companies and realize, and some people will prefer to buy equipment from a warts and all company that tell you the truth than from people that hide stuff. I guess that's a natural progression in any industries, I suppose. The next one I wanted to talk about was another crowdfunder in trouble. Did we see the Spiri? Everyone see that they've spent all their money and that's yet another one not coming out? No, all right, well, knock the head on that one.
It happens so often.
Yeah, it does. In England, they're having they're actually going to have UAT. They're going to have the weather on transmitted from the ground, rebroadcast. So that's great if you're a fixed wing pilot, and that's a very cool thing. And I wanted to talk a lot about UTMs, but we're over the time, and I wanted to talk about Tridge about UTMs and what we're going to do with this, because potentially we could get now even this can be part of a manned traffic management system, because the app could talk to one, and it could fit into controlled airspace.
Yep, you could.
Which is amazing. It's amazing. Well, Aylesbury Police, did we see their way of trying to find the bad guy? Do you see that, Bruce?
Which was that one? They found a drone somewhere, was it?
Yeah, that's right. And they said, we've got it, you know, and if you want it back, your friendly policeman will come and have that. And that had the whole hook mod and everything, and GPS done. Tinfoil hat was done. And the last thing I wanted to add was I found a really interesting NASA crash course, ARPAS crash course PDF, and the link will be in the bottom when this is finished, and that's all about several crashes that they've had with ARPAS, and it's pretty honest, and so I thought that was pretty cool. So that's well worth a read, worth almost printing out and taking to the toilet with you. So that to rush through it, that's what I had on the talking list. Did anyone else have anything else for tonight?
We did get to see the new unique industrial copter that came out, the beta, and we took it to a fire training station, and we were at night, and they have this little ball camera that they're going to put on there, and has a FLIR. It's only a 160 FLIR, but you know, hey, it's better than nothing. The whole copter is supposed to sell for about $6,500 with FLIR and the ball, turret, everything. And you know, it was quiet, and it worked pretty well. It has a 25 to 30 minute flight time. But what we were really impressed with, we were out also testing core mag lights for Inspires and stuff like that. 3D printed a bunch of stuff, and we were hanging them off of them. And the EO camera on the unique bird was just a ripper. It was great. At night, blows the doors off the X3. We could shine a light into the building, and that camera would see all the way to the back of the building through a doorway, which was really impressive to us. So we're going to wait until they come out with the production version before we pass any real verdict on it yet. But so far so good. Bright orange, so it's out there and visible. We'll see what happens, but it was a good test.
just go again with that price. Was that 6.5 with that camera?
Yes.
That sort of on an evening talking about game changers, that'd be a game changer.
Yeah, well, that's raised my eyebrows, that's for sure. And the thing, it flies good. The controller is very nicely integrated and looks substantial. You know, the copter itself needs to be beefed up a little bit, but you know, these were betas. We're going to wait and see. But flew well, and gotta say, I was pretty impressed with that EO camera at night.
Have they got a time scale for it? Timeline?
Next 30 to 60 days.
And what was it called? What was it? Did you say its name again?
It was a number designation. It was
okay.
the unique industrial.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, they're probably going to come up with a clever name for it.
They are indeed. Look at this, we're 5 minutes over time. Does anybody else have anything else? Is any news from the world of swans? No news.
No, she's all quiet here, mate. No, again, but except for our local town council, after they were forced to allow people to fly their toys in the park, now they've come out with a new bylaw, or in the process of passing it, which says you can't, but you can ride a motorbike.
Yes, that's right. You said a pocket bike or something like that. And Loretta, is there any FAA skullduggery in the background whilst lots of other news is happening there, or is it all actually just running along quietly?
Well, no, actually, they've had a major reorganization at the FAA, and it's kind of wait and see who is doing what in flight standards. So there's a lot of confusion, as I understand it, among the troops as to who reports to whom, because they basically centralized everything. So they've gotten rid of a lot of they haven't gotten rid of the field offices, but they've gotten rid of the way things functioned in the past. So I think that for anyone who deals regularly with the FAA, it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. And I think for the employees too.
Is that why my COA is delayed?
What?
Is that why my COA is delayed?
I don't know if that's why it's delayed, but but there has been a lot of reorganization in flight standards. I'm not sure if the UAS office is actually in flight standards, so maybe not directly.
Well, it's in.
Is there any news on the second John Taylor case?
No news on that or the Singer case. We've been expecting a decision pretty much all summer on Singer, so hopefully soon.
Okay, cool. All right, guys, so we've gone 8 minutes over. Thank you very, very much for joining us again. I have to say the YouTubey things, like or dislike, it's all the same. Subscribe, links in the bottom, blah, 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 blah. And don't forget, subscribe to, have a good look at ardupilot.org. Have a good look at Bruce's hat and Bruce's channels. Bruce's channels are available. Bruce comes to us from the future. Apparently, that is next year's fashion.
Bruce, we have to get one of these with like this.
Oh yes, because you're joining Rotor Riot, I think. Is that the new Rotor Riot hat you're sporting there, then, Bruce?
I don't think so. No, I don't think Rotor Riot will be chasing me very far.
There you go.
There you go. Free right ahead.
It is definitely time to go, isn't it? I'll be flying this autonomously, hopefully tomorrow if the wind drops.
Hey, can I turn on the props?
And we'll give it a go, and we'll make a video about this. And with that, I'll say farewell and thank you very much to Loretta, to Dr. Andrew Tridgell, Matt Morton, Bruce Simpson, Jean Louis, and that's everybody, I think. So with that, bye-bye.
Adios.
Bye.
And Bruce.
And Bruce.
Bye-bye.